Welcome back. Thank you, Mrs. Sosby, for being here. We're going to address questions today for the questions that you had during your observation of Mrs. Sosby's class a couple of weeks ago during our in-service. Our focus today is what happens during independent activities in the classroom, and these questions are ones that you asked, and so we'll get started. Repeatedly, the question was, well, what do you do on Monday? Because they noticed that there was something very different with Monday, either what was up on the board and some other things. So I think it's a really easy answer to this question, but a lot of people wanted to know, what happens in your class on Monday?
We have art. We have a 20-minute math period during the actual math block. So we do some extra review of skills, try and warm that brain up after a long weekend, and do some of that for 20 minutes.
So not able to do that complete math time where you have the different things that they need to be completing during math workshop. Okay, so Monday's art. It's the reality of school. What does additional math work look like? And I think this question just, you were working with a small group, and so I kind of addressed the group, and I said, okay, a majority of what's happening right now is IXL, and you've got a couple of kids playing games. But when everybody's in here, there's another thing going on, and it's additional math work. And so that drove this question of, what does additional math work look like? Additional math work can look anything like if we've taken an assessment and I realize, oh, nobody understood perimeter. So I do a quick review maybe, and then at small groups or something, and then the next time they go off on their own. And it can be anything, some kind of practice, or it is a CGI style problem that they bring the next time to small group for us to discuss. And you talked about that in your last in our last video about how kids bring those folders. In that. So this is both that folder serves as their workbook, for lack of a better term, when they come to your mini lesson, they're working and solving problems in there, in addition to when they have additional independent work that may be prerequisite skills, it may be some review skills or other information that tells you that kid. So would you say that every kid is working on something different during that time, or would you say it's almost group based? Okay. What does that group need? All right. But they have two notebooks. They have one for math workshop that they do their independent, their small group and all that, and then I have another one that they do their mini lesson, note taking, CGI. So they have two completely different notebooks. Oh, okay. Yeah, that they keep up with. So you touched on it in the last and a little bit now in the last video about groups, about how you hold students accountable for their independent work. And so just to clarify, bringing their folders to the small group is how you're able to take a look at that information. But talk to us more, and you also talked about in the IXL video about how you're holding students accountable for their IXL work. But talk to us about how you're holding kids accountable for playing the math games, because I think that was one of the questions that was also often repeated. They are required to put the date at the top, and then they are required to, this one, she was working on the addition game, and so she's required to show what she did, to write out what math problems did she do. Even during there's one with the cup stacking, they're required to make a list of all the ones that they did so that they can prove that that's what they were doing during that time. So we a lot of us noticed that during that time, and everybody knows who he is, Talon. Talon was not recording that. He was solving on a whiteboard. Was that just him not doing the routine that was expected? Yes. Okay. And he, probably not going to lie to you, he probably couldn't find his journal. Okay. And so instead of coming and asking me, he was being a problem solver, and he just pulled out that white. He didn't interrupt your group. Yep. And I think we can all vouch that he was working on his work, and he was authentically solving problems because he had a lot of teachers looking over his shoulder and seeing what's doing. So the expectation was for him to solve that in the notebook. He just didn't measure up to that expectation there. But we all know he was doing his work. What do you do, and this is a reality, and especially here in the last couple of weeks, in the last couple of weeks, what do you do when you don't have an IA to teach a group?
They will either go on an extra rotation of IXL. That is typically what I do, or I give them the additional practice, whatever problem or thing they were going to do with Miss Tolan, they just go ahead and glue in their journal and complete it until she either gets there or the next time when she comes in.
Okay.
Because I have her things already printed and made for her.
Okay. Very good. Well, this concludes our video on small group independent activity questions. In our final installment, we're going to talk about curriculum and maybe cover just some other random questions I didn't think could fit in a category. Thanks.